Welcome everybody. Welcome to Truth with Braden. I welcome you here. This agenda is to address the hospital situation, a lot of those rumors, all the myths. We want to dispel those. We want to let everybody in the community know where the hospital was, what we think it, and how it should be with the truth. I'll start this, and we'll go ahead and do the prayer. And Lisa, if you would, please.
We please stand to say the prayer.
Father God, we just thank you, Lord, for this time. Lord, we ask that you have your way in this place. Thank you for every person that's here. Lord, help us all to have ears to hear what you would have us to hear, Father. Lord, we ask that you'll speak through the people that need to be that need to be anointed tonight, Father. Use them, put your words in their mouth tonight. Let nothing be said that's not of you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, Stokes County. How are we doing?
Good.
My name is A.J. Dowd, and I've had various positions with the state Republican GOP party, but that has anything to do with this community meeting. The organizers of this meeting asked me honorably, I accepted, to come and moderate this, so you all know that I don't have a personal stake, even though I am a Stokes County taxpayer, and try to make this as fair and as civilized as possible so we can go ahead and get the information across to you. Just so you know, I did a debate yesterday in Cabarrus County. I've done probably 50 or 60 of these either debates or conventions. So just so you all know, it does get emotional. If we can kind of hold back your emotional feelings, because the main purpose tonight is for all these speakers and all these people to pass information on to you guys. And of course, if we get emotional or we start arguing, emotions prevents that information from being communicated to you all, so you can make a later informed decision.
Do we have representation of other board of commissioners here?
I don't know that. Let's see if we can get an answer. Let me go ahead and give me a minute to kind of finish this off, then we'll go from there, okay? There we go. First off, it's good to see so many friends, old friends, longtime friends, reacquaintances again. And I want to recognize, as some of you all know and some of you don't, I had the privilege of doing law enforcement for about 12, 13 years. And Mike Marshall and I are blue brothers. And Sheriff, I know, even though Joey's sheriff now, you're still one of the best sheriffs in my heart that I've known around the state. And let's give Mike a big round of applause. The quote what Mike and I were just talking about. If anybody does get rowdy, and hopefully we don't have to, between Mike and I, we've handled enough people in our day. Mike says, I'm still able to throw somebody out, AJ. So let's not have Mike use his powers or our experiences to do so. Having said that, we're going to go ahead and begin the form here in a second, so let me ask you a question. Any elected officials here, let's do it this way. Any elected officials here stand up?
Could they, introduce themselves?
Sure. I don't know if the mic will go over that far. Go ahead.
I'm Ronnie Mendon Hall, County Commissioner.
I'm Sonia Cox, Chair of the Stokes County Board of County Commissioners.
Andy Nicholson, County Commissioner.
Thank you, we appreciate it. Brian, good seeing you again
Good to
after.
see you, AJ.
I think both of us are losing hair since the last time we saw each other.
You don't have to.
Either case. My understanding is, according to the agenda I was given, that the first item on here is going to be the group from Bradenton Health, and there's 3 people up here. Kyle Kopetnik is going to be talking on behalf of that group. And again, go ahead and give me your names again, I forgot. Casey and Larry Henson are also with them. They're going to go ahead and give you a presentation. After that presentation, there will be questions and answers. And the question and answer session per person is going to be timed to 5 minutes. Because we want to make sure that A, the information gets across, but B, that we get you all home in a decent hour, and we're not here at midnight fighting, because I'm not going to be here at midnight fighting anybody. So having said that, let's go ahead and give a hand and let them go ahead and put on their presentation. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kyle Kopek. I'm the Vice President and Chief Medical Compliance Officer with Braden Health. With me is Larry Henson, who's the Revenue Cycle Director for Braden Health, and Casey Terrell. They happen to run our North Carolina office, which is based out of Greensboro. Also in the crowd is Zach Feldman, our Director of Operations for the organization. So a little bit about us, and then a little bit about why we're here tonight. Our organization is one of 27 patient safety organizations listed by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. And it's a very big thing, which essentially means that we've been charged by HHS to form patient safety improvements and outcomes. Part of the way we do that is by analyzing large quantities of highly sensitive Medicare data. And by doing that, we are able to track when rural hospitals are in trouble or at risk of closure. As a result, we've gone around the country and we've worked on over 164 rural hospitals in 23 states. We own, probably the nearest ones to you guys that we own are in Tennessee, in the western region of that state, which, like North Carolina, has seen a lot of closures. Me personally, I have been to 62 rural hospitals on 3 continents with Braden Health, and then also with some other organizations that I'm a part of as a volunteer. So we've had our fair bit of things that we've seen, and things that are good and things that are bad. And one of the most important things about a community is the survivability of its rural hospital. Without it, communities die. We see it all the time. So I'm really glad that we have a good turnout tonight. I think my understanding is we're going to talk about some of the things that we've seen and some of the work we've done in North Carolina, and then we'll turn it over for the next session. But I'm happy to answer questions when I'm done with my little rambling as far as things we've seen. So just as you think of them, at the end I'll be sure to answer whatever comes up. So kind of why I'm here and why we're here is because of that Medicare data that we have access to. Is we know that your hospital's in trouble, and it really is objectively. So we also know that your lease with LifeBright was coming up for renewal. As part of any county government, renewals are subject to what are called requests for proposals. Essentially, if you operate or own rural hospitals, or you want to operate or own a rural hospital that is owned by a government entity, or you want to lease it from a government entity or buy it, you go through this process, which is transparent, it's monitored by the state government, usually in the Attorney General's office, and is generally run by the county commission. That's of course speaking in general. Some counties have more specific rules, and usually sometimes it's in an industrial development board or something like that. So our organization, myself and some other folks on our staff, reached out to Stokes County. We actually started with Commissioner Rick Morris because he was, I believe, the chairman of the hospital committee or board, if I'm not mistaken. And we were not able to successfully make contact. We originally used the email addresses found on the North Carolina website that you guys have for your county, your official government website. And then we reached out to the county commission and also to your county executive's office. And through doing that, we were introduced to Andy Nicholson because despite their efforts and our efforts, we were unable to make contact with Commissioner Morris. And we just simply said, hey, you know, we know your hospital's in a lot of trouble. Do you guys want to have a meeting about it so we can get more information as concerned citizens and also North Carolina taxpayers and a patient safety organization and also a operator and owner of rural hospitals. And you know, we had an initial meeting and we just discussed some things that were very apparent. You guys have a lease with this hospital, which is a public record. In that public record, there are some very specific rules about what your current operator can and cannot do. So some things that were concerning to us is the current operators of your hospital are indicted for federal crimes for running what would be considered a lab scam. Now, we're big proponents in innocent until proven guilty, and we're not here to cast judgment on if the operator of that hospital is guilty or not. That's up to a jury of their peers. But with some of the language in the lease, the actual ability of that hospital to be run by that operator came into question very quickly because some clauses actually indicated that an indictment itself is grounds for the county to no longer allow operation of that hospital. So with the indictments in mind, we requested a tour of the facility. Your facility is owned by the county. It's leased by the current operator, LifeBright. So part of that lease states that the county and designees and representatives and officials and members of the public may tour that facility at any time. As part of our due diligence to see if taking on the operation of your hospital or what the status of your hospital is, we requested that. And we had a team of around 12 people. I know Larry and Casey were with us there. And we were pretty much in the parking lot of your hospital when we received a call saying that we would not be allowed access to the facility for a tour or evaluation of it. So we ended up going back to your, I believe it's your county commission building, and we met with your commissioners in a public meeting, and were able to interview some of the hospital staff. And there were some things there that we thought were alarming. You know, when you've been to 60 hospitals like I have, or you run 140 like Dr. Braden does, Casey and Larry have been to countless, and so has Zach. It's very easy to tell when things are going well and things are not going well. Some things we look for is, okay, when was the last time the staff had a raise? When was the last time your hospital beds were upgraded? What's the condition of your facility? And, you know, looking around the room, I don't think that's hard for any of you guys to think of an answer as to that. Your facility's in really bad shape. It's actually, from the descriptions, it seems like it's in worse shape than we even thought it was. At one point, we were provided with a public evaluation done with the hospital that said it would need at least $10 million of improvements to meet a minimum standard of operability. Now, that does not mean if we put $10 million into your hospital, it's gonna be great by any means. What it means is it now meets the basic criteria for you to be able to take care of your patients in a manner that's safe. The other thing that we looked at were HHS filings for things called NPI numbers and PTAN numbers. And to sort of oversimplify, but essentially what these are, is the way your county or your hospital gets paid is they use those numbers on a form which is where the money is directed to. The hospital CEO, during our meeting, which was recorded, told us that those numbers were directly associated with the husband and wife of the owners of the hospital group. Which, if you don't own the hospital and you are the owner of a private company, that's, at best, that's questionable or just concern. At worst, you end up with an indictment. Not to say that this is why they were indicted, but it's worth considering if you are a taxpayer and you own the hospital. So with that in mind, our organization was kind of seeing some really interesting things. And another thing that was interesting is you guys have a nursing home attached to your hospital, and there were some statements made to us that were also recorded that, well, the nursing home is really run by the CEO of the hospital, but we have someone else's name on it because North Carolina law requires it, but really the operator of it is the same, which is, of course, not only a conflict of interest, but gets into questions as far as anti-kickback laws go. So, needless to say, our organization saw a lot of issues. We are interested, and we were interested in acquiring it, but, you know, and of course there was originally at one point a vote not to renew, but it's very clear that there's a lot of changes that would need to happen at your hospital for it to even survive in a long-term sense. So, you know, in taking a step back, and for everyone in the room to consider, I want you to imagine if you were a ship that's on fire in the middle of the ocean. And there's an argument about if the ship is on fire. And, you know, your ship's carrying a bunch of oil on it. Is it really, do we really want to get into the argument as if the ship is or is not on fire when there's smoke all over it and no one can breathe? That's pretty much what we're seeing with your hospital. So much so that we went, after our meetings, we went and met with the state of North Carolina. I've met with a lot of your legislators, senators, representatives. They also know that your hospital's struggling immensely, and one of the suggestions was, well, how do we help? And our suggestion, as far as being an HHS organization, was, well, they need at least $10 million to be safe and operate. But the operator's indicted. We don't know who the operator is going to be. We don't know if it's going to be us. We don't know if it's going to be somebody else. Our recommendation is for that money to go to the county. That way, when it's transferred to the hospital or spent on equipment or construction or whatever else, it can be audited. Because right now, as far as paperwork and audit trails go, it's kind of a black hole. I mean, we weren't even provided with very much, I don't think, as far as objective, auditable information. So, you know, the greatest concern that we had was after leaving the county and going through a situation where we may have had to have assumed operations very quickly of a struggling and failing hospital, which is something we've done many times over, is you have some very limited options on things you can do. HHS has some very specific rules. Obviously, we can't get those NPI or PTAN numbers back because they're no longer associated with your county, they're associated with two individuals that do not own your hospital. So one solution would be you have to get new numbers. Now to do that, you have to get a new hospital license. It's something we've done a lot. Larry's had to fill out a lot of NPI forms. Or another thing that was interesting too is the exclusions from Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the largest commercial payer. If you're a rural hospital, you can break even on Medicare, Medicaid, sort of. But your commercial payers is what makes that 2 to 8% profit margin that allows your hospital to exist. Once you're thrown out of network, it becomes very hard for you to make profit. And then if you lose Cigna as well, you're in the hole. And in our conversations with Blue Cross Blue Shield, it was, yeah, we're not going to take the existing numbers to get network with you guys. We want new ones. So the way to do that is you would essentially have to close your hospital for a day, 2, a week, however long it takes in the state of North Carolina to get those numbers back in. And for someone like our organization, that's something we've done many times over. Basically, to do it right, you have to keep all the staff on payroll. You have to be able to front those costs, that sort of thing. So it sounds almost more exciting than it is, but really, there's nothing too crazy there. But one of the things that was also interesting is, as we're going through this and then kind of got to a point of, well, we're not going to do an RFP. The county commission votes to renew life rights lease. That's fine, we're still monitoring it. We end up in a position where we're contacted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and our staff is then interviewed, which has happened a couple times before, actually, by the fraud and political fraud investigation units of that agency, as far as things that we saw and issues we discovered. So all those things in mind, I'm here to tell you that your hospital has a lot of issues. You may choose to believe me, you may choose not to believe me, but you should be very alarmed when you have an operator that will not allow you to tour their facility, that does not have a concrete plan that's publishable with the county or with the state as far as improvements go, and some outside operator that's interested in your hospital was able to secure funding from the state that the current operator could not. And you gotta ask yourself, well, why is that?
No, we gotta ask ourselves why you get funded from the government.
No interruptions, please.
Hey, can we
No
start asking
interruptions.
questions?
There will be a question and answer period.
Let's get the bottom line there, Stuart.
So, anyway, so kind of continuing on, we were able to secure funding from the state that's auditable. I would suggest you watch where it goes. I hope it's spent well, but I would keep a very close eye on things. There's no excuse, as far as I'm concerned, in hospitals that we've operated in not being able to pay staff fairly or on time. Our organization's never missed a payroll or had to be selective about it. It's not a widespread issue with rural health. It's an isolated issue with certain types of folks that have trouble running rural hospitals. And in closing, I'd like to say, at this point, I don't know if our organization is interested in taking on Stokes or not. It's something that we would have to fully evaluate again. So it's not I'm not here tonight to say, look, you should pick us to run your hospital. I don't know if your hospital is even savable at this point by our own metrics. But I am here to tell you that you gotta pay very close attention. And, you can take my word for it or not, but my reputation and my organization's reputation is we've gone around the country saving rural hospitals. We've survived and passed all of our audits. We've made millions, tens of millions in personal investments in hospitals, and we've run them all successfully. No hospital that we own has ever closed. In fact, we're in the process of building replacement hospitals for some of our facilities. So I would just suggest keeping your eyes open as greatly as possible. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Let me interrupt you a second. As we get into the question and answer period, now you can stand up. I've been informed there's a live mic on the side over here.
Right here, sir.
Where?
Like I understand.
On the stand right here. I'm sure you could stand up, and if not, go from there. We also ask, because this is being recorded, and we do have a written secretary taking some notes, that if you could please tell us your name when anybody comes up, ask a question, your name, what your address is, and these folks will go ahead and answer your questions, and it's for a total period not to exceed 5 minutes per speaker. So it'd probably be better if you guys stand up. Or what do you guys think? Because you guys are the experts. I'm just a referee here. Floor is yours, sir.
All right. Ben Rolfus, 2757 Sisk Road, Bostonville. We moved to this county 2012 from Currituck County, the richest county in North Carolina. We were involved in that county, not on the board, but we saw the corruption, we saw all the back dealings, we saw the UDO, Uniform Directive Order, through Carlisle Group come in, make deals behind closed doors, and usher in part of the United Nations agenda. It was Agenda 2021, now it's Agenda 2030. So I'm not a lifetime Stokes resident, but part of the reason we moved here was, A, it was conservative county, okay? Had a good sheriff, because the sheriff has more constitutional authority than any politician on up to the federal government. And I'm getting to my point, okay? So that's part of the reason we moved here. We didn't want to go to the meetings because we elected these officials to do the right job on our benefit, right, for our benefit. They're not leaders, they're freaking servants. They serve us. So when a company like yours, no offense, but you don't know this county. I don't know the hospital really, but I know I've talked to a lot of people. I'm in sales. They love the hospital, may not be the best hospital, but it serves this community. It needs to stay in Danbury, and we don't need somebody else coming in. You know, of course, in sales, you gotta, well, some people make the competition look bad, right? But let's see what your records look, your financial statement. And your affiliation with the HHS, were they the ones that mandated or supported vaccines? I'm just asking for a friend. Do you know?
So we're familiar, we are a patient safety organization,
Right.
which is not affiliated with the branch of
But you said you had
HHS.
some type of affiliation or approval through the HHS, is that
Right,
correct?
so essentially, our affiliation with HHS allows access to all of their Medicare data. It does not have any involvement with the vaccine mandates or the process involved with making vaccines.
Okay. And as far as the FBI, anybody that trusts the FBI these days is a damn fool, okay? Because they are so corrupt. So all this stuff you're coming in about this indictment, all of Washington should be in jail. So that stuff don't matter to us, okay? Bringing in the FBI bullcrap, we don't care about that. Do you have something real to offer to keep the hospital in Danbury? If you don't, hey, adios, thank you.
Absolutely. So I would say that, like you said, the hospital isn't great. What's our reputation? Our reputation is taking really bad hospitals and making them great. I mean, it's plain and
Prove
simple.
it.
You can Google our
You should
organization.
have brought that today, you should have
You
handed
need to
that
be
out
at the
to
podium
them.
if you're gonna speak again.
I can talk later, you want me to come back
Yeah,
up?
anyone can type in Braden Health into Google on your cell phone or my name, Kyle Kopech, and I will just let the information speak for itself on that one.
You have 2 minutes left. All right.
You should have brought that documentation and financial statement with you. Words are cheap. That's what has gotten this country in the trouble it is, okay? You may be real, right? I don't know. But we're tired of the talk. That's why a lot of people are here today. So I would suggest the Board of Commissioners post y'all's financial statement on the public Stokes County website, okay, to where you can make that available to all the citizens, and let us look at the numbers. So this meeting's about proof, all we're hearing is talk, okay? No offense to you.
No, of course.
All right.
No, and I agree. I think anyone is welcome to look up our public records, our audited
That's-
financial statements, and we'll be able to see.
You're here trying to buy the hospital, right? You should have that documentation with you. Or not,
No, yeah, so I'm not
buy
here
it, take
trying
it
to-
over or something.
No, I'm not here trying to buy your hospital. In fact, I don't even know if it fits our metrics for sustainability at this point. I'm telling you that we knew the lease was going to expire and we wanted to get more information to see if it was viable. And we were not able to do that.
Should give your name and address. Mhm.
I would like fair time to address the things that
You'll be
were
good.
said. More, it will take me more than 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. So how about you go to that open mic?
Sure.
Tell them who you are. How much time do you think you need?
To address the things
Yeah.
that were not correct.
This is rebuttal to what they're saying. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure, we're not gonna hold the 5-minute time limit, so she goes ahead and, administrator here goes ahead. So go ahead and tell everyone your name and,
Sure.
where you are.
Pam Tillman, I'm the administrator of Life Bright Community Hospital of Stokes and a citizen of Stokes County. I'd like to ask if Jake Oakley is here. I didn't see everybody who's here. Jake, I'll need you to confirm a couple of things for me. The first thing I would like to say, what was presented, that they brought 12 people to come up to the hospital. The context was Jake Oakley said, these are the people who are taking over the hospital, and they need to come up there and meet with you and your staff. And at that point, I had asked Jake, please provide me with the written plan of how I get us from point A, which is Lifebright, to point B, which is Braden. And I was never presented with a written plan because there was not one. Is that not correct, Jake? Yes.
I honestly do not know what you're talking about. I mean, you're sitting here saying things that, this is the first time I've ever heard.
Okay, I will just say that I went down. You can imagine this was very concerning to me. So the next morning after the vote of the commissioners, I went down to Jake's office. He was present, as well as Shannon Shaver and Amber Brown, and I said, I have to know how I get from point A to point B. Everything I know that has to be done to transition a hospital cannot happen in this amount of time. So please just provide me the document. I will do everything humanly possible, if it can be done, to make that happen. I'm gonna put you on the spot anymore. I'll just say what I know is right. So the context of why they were not allowed up to the hospital that day was to put a hospital that had already been put in more turmoil by having them come and meet with staff. So I asked the owner, or the CEO, who I report to, if I could please have permission to respectfully work with my commissioners and my county manager to offer to go down to the government center and meet with these folks, answer any questions, because at that point I was still trying to figure out what in the world was going on. So, apparently, the person who concerned them so much was me, because I was the one they were interviewing for what was at least 2 hours. My recollection of our meeting is a little different from yours, because you all were eagerly asking questions. Some of your folks wanted to hand me a business card to get right on how we were going to make the transition, and you were stopped.
I think we asked you a lot of questions that we did not have answers to, and we gave you our business cards so you could track down answers which were not provided as far as information on the hospital, which would have been very easy to find if we were allowed access to it in accordance with the county's agreement with your organization.
So what I was asked, those PTANs that he mentioned and the MPIs, these are very important pieces of information that we have to provide. Our personal information, I have to provide my personal address to CMS when these are applied for. So an MPI and a PTAN pretty much says who you are, what you're doing, and which piece of business you are doing. We have several different MPIs and PTANs.
Yeah, they should be the county's address, not your own personal address.
May I please have an opportunity to say what I need to say?
Yes.
And then.
Why don't we wait till the end?
Thank
Sorry, I
you.
thought it was the question and answer.
No, that's fine, you're good.
So these PTANs, we have several for the hospital. They direct what pieces of hospital business. So there is an MPI and a PTAN for each rural health clinic. They are doing business as, that's an expected thing for us to do. It's on every legal document, just as it should be. When you do these, we were asked to provide our passwords and usernames. My assistant and I take this very seriously, and her statement to me that day was, if you make me give my passwords and this information, I will walk out the door right now. As she should have, because it's my name My address they will come looking for if I give that to somebody else who does something they should not. Nobody should ever ask you to do that. As far as the ownership structure, I was asked about that. Our ownership structure was from the beginning, Christian Fletcher as owner, then LifeBright Laboratories as the next layer, then LifeBright Hospital Group as the next layer, then LifeBright Hospital Group of Stokes. Christian Fletcher is our CEO. Amber Fletcher, his wife, is our COO, and I'm the administrator who reports to them. That is all legally reported to the government, as it should be. The nursing home has its own PTAN and MPI, as it should, and the name of that nursing home is Stokes County Nursing Home. Nothing is wrong with that. There is nothing about that that should be brought into question. I am the administrator of the hospital. There are 4 critical access hospitals who have nursing homes left in the state of North Carolina. We are one of those, and as that, I am allowed to be the hospital administrator and the nursing home administrator. Nothing wrong with that. The state knows it, they survey us, they know, and they are working for CMS. Nothing is hidden and nothing is inappropriate. That's how we operated under North Carolina Baptist Hospital. That's how we operated under the county. That's how we operated under Pioneer. That is not something to be brought into question. As far as asking for the information, typical process, if any entity comes in that wants to know about our hospital or about doing business, an NDA is requested, a non-disclosure agreement. This acknowledges that the 2 parties are going to work together in good faith to share information for a specific purpose. So the context for them coming in asking for information, there was no NDA, there was no document as to what the plan with the county was that I was ever provided, and I went down from the day of the vote not to renew the lease to the day that vote was overturned, asking for a document, asking for a plan, and I was never provided with that. As far as Blue Cross Blue Shield telling any entity to close down their hospital, to get a new contract or a PTAN, they would never do that. Never would they tell a hospital to close. I have been through the change of ownership from Baptist Hospital to HMC, who is an interim management group, to Pioneer, to LifeBright. I know what that process is. Blue Cross follows those same PTANs. You make your own agreement, you make your own contract, and that is how that business is done. Nobody would ever tell you to shut down your hospital. And if they did, that is who you should be concerned about. For the process of changing ownership, I was here when we went from Baptist. As I said, through all of those changes, we did do an RFP process. There's statute 131E that I have had to follow, that I worked with when we did that before. That takes months and weeks. You have to send out proposal widely, requests for proposals from anyone in the area. I think we sent out to 20 entities when we were going from Baptist, trying to find someone to come in who might be interested in our hospital. Then there are public meetings. You all would and should have been invited to public meetings with specific time frames. It's very regimented, very specific what has to be done, because these are important decisions that need to be made with the county's input and with the county's knowledge, not something that is done and expected to be transitioned in 10 days. If any other information is brought up, I would like the opportunity to.
Just raise your hand.
Actually, I have one question for Pam, if that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
How about you stand up? and-
Yeah, of course.
Stand up and then.
Sure. It's just,
Again, for a period probably not to exceed 5 minutes. if you-
oh, of course, no. I guess my question is just, why wasn't there an RFP process for the lease renewal? Which is kind of one of the points that I was making too. I just want to make sure we're both clear on that, because I think, we are saying there should have been, and there wasn't, and you're saying there was with Baptist, but Baptist is not the current operator of the hospital.
That's the process we did to get a lease. The lease states a 10-year initial period with a 5-year renewal and option for a 5-year renewal, and then a second option for a 5-year renewal. So when LifeBright assumed the lease that Pioneer had in existence out of the bankruptcy, then that notice was given to that they desired to renew the lease.
Right, and those
In
renewals are only if all of your lease terms are met, correct?
In May of this last year,
Yeah.
I
Sorry, that was a yes or no
communicated,
question.
I communicated with the county attorney, Ty Browder, and Tobin Watt, the LifeBright attorney, as to getting the documents ready for the lease renewal. And the response I got from the county attorney was, the commissioners had no issues with renewing the lease, and Tobin is going to draft that lease.
Okay, my question is, you're the administrator of the hospital, you're responsible for it. Were
Sure.
all the lease terms met? Was every lease term in your lease agreement met?
As far as I understood, yes.
Okay. What about the language discussing indictments and compliance with laws and inspections, because we were not allowed in, which is in your lease agreement?
As I said, the context of your coming was that you were coming in to meet employees and tell them about how you were going to assume.
That was
The
not the
hospital.
context of our visit.
That was the context that was presented to me by my county manager. And that is why I called and had my boss allow me to go meet with you all. Because I was trying to be cooperative with the transition, if that is what I had to do, and that is what I thought I had to do at that point. I tried to cooperate every way I knew to do to keep our hospital open.
Okay, I'm not really quite sure, still why there wasn't an RFP process then, because it sounds like, it would have been required.
No, sir. The language in the lease said that if the leasee desired to renew, to go ahead and give notice, we were rolling right along, as I said, even to the point that the county attorney said that the county was in agreement and we were drafting. As a matter of fact, they already had both the Pine Hall lease
Did the county attorney
renewal.
advise you before or after the county commission voted?
Before, in May. The vote was in July.
So
So
the
in
attorney advised you on behalf of the county of Stokes without the commissioners voting, you are responsible for that decision.
You'll have to ask the county commissioners and the county attorney about that. I'm telling you, the email I received and the county received both documents in the same email, the Pine Hall lease renewal and the hospital renewal. The Pine Hall lease renewal was taken right on through and voted. The hospital lease, I was never told why it was not taken on through until we got to this point. But to fully answer your question, since you brought me back to it, there would not have been a reason for an RFP at that point unless the commissioners decided well enough ahead to do the whole RFP process before it expired. It takes several months. I would have to pull out. It took at least 3 months for the proper time periods between the RFP going out, the notices, the public meetings that are required by statute 131E. And there was not time to do that in July.
Right, especially before the county's vote, so I don't know why the attorney would have advised you without the commission's approval.
Like I said, you'll have to ask them. I can only tell you what I was operating on.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions? Podium's open, any other questions? Yes, Mr. Bryan. Come to the microphone, you need to give your name and address, please.
Susan McBride, 1074 Nance Road, King, North Carolina. My question, in your presentation, you said you went down to Raleigh and spoke with people, legislators and whatever. I'd like to know who those legislators were. And then I'd like to know, would that be considered, you are the one that actually lobbied for that $10 million to be given to Stokes County? I kind of was under the impression Carlisle did that. But it seemed like what you just said is you are the one that got us the $10 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our organization lobbied Senator Joyce Krawick, Representative Kyle Hall, Phil Berger, and several others. We'd actually have to get a list of all the people we met with because there were around 15 or 20 of them. And it was my government affairs team and our lobbyists.
So you are saying, yes, you are the one that lobbied for the $10 million to be put into Stokes County?
Yeah, I'm saying our organization was the one that did it, absolutely.
Okay, so then therefore that's the one that changed the wording to new facility, right?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're.
I mean, it was kind of, was it not, for repairs to this hospital, then all of a sudden the wording was changed to new, which, actually I've been told you did us a favor on that because we do need a new hospital in Danbury.
Yeah, I believe the budget allocation is for the county to deem how the funds are used. So I believe the line item in the state of North Carolina budget is $10 million for Stokes County for use of hospital. But I would have to take another look at it to be absolutely certain, but I believe you're correct.
Okay, then one other thing is, so are you all wanting a new hospital in Danbury?
I don't really have a preference on location, and I don't know. Part of what I'm here to tell you is I don't know if you need a new hospital or not. I've never seen the inside of your hospital. Your hospital may be repairable, it may not be, but frankly, I don't have a strong preference if you do need a new hospital as to where it would go, other than ensuring that it meets the state and federal requirements, so it's not in the floodplain and has easy access and that sort of thing.
Okay, well, the only other thing that I want to say, and this is not a question, this is an observance of just what I just witnessed for the last 10 minutes of when you got up here and spoke, and then Pam came up and spoke. I've known Pam all my life. For you to have treated her the way you just treated her, I'm looking at this as not someone who wants to come in and help our hospital or help our county. I'm looking at this as a hostile takeover. I see you all as coming in, wanting to take over the hospital. And that's just my observance. I just wanted to point that out. But thank you for answering the question that Carlisle did not get us the $10 million. You lobbied for it.
Yes, sir, come on up here.
It'll be real quick. Do I need to give my name and
Yeah,
address?
please, because it's being recorded and
Ben
people are
Rolfes.
and people are handwriting the notes, so it's easier. Thank you.
Ben Rolfes, 2757 Sisk Road. It's Kyle, correct? You seem like you're a
Yes.
go-getter, but it just dawned on me, showing up at the hospital, eager, young man, aggressive, I can admire that, it's a good trait. But why didn't you apply that same go-getterness to contacting Rick Morris? And say, oh, well, I'll just send him an email, and, oh, he didn't respond.
So we did. There were several different attempts to contact Rick Morris. The first was via email. It was
Okay.
not just one
Did
single
you call?
attempt.
Did you go by his home?
Yes, actually, we went to the open office hours on his website. I actually wasn't the one who went. It was 3 members of my team,
Okay.
and he was not there.
open office hours means he should be there, but he just may
Right,
not have been there
and,
that time.
right, and it was, we went more than once.
Okay.
He was not there.
Did you go
We
by
tried
his house?
calling, I don't know what his personal address is. No, of course not, I didn't go by his house, that would be very inappropriate.
Well, you show up at the hospital unannounced, the way I understand it.
No, not announced, it was coordinated with the county.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Ladies and gentlemen, any other questions? Any other questions out there in the audience? Come on up here. Please step up to the mic, period of 5 minutes.
Oh, this will be quick.
Please give your name and address for the record.
Hey, I'm Jenna Holt, 2016 Moorfield Road. Can you tell me you guys' specific web address? Because I was trying to look it up, but I could not pinpoint it.
Yes, of course, it's bradenhealth.com, BRADEN health, HEALTH.com.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Cell phone service.
Oh, of course.
Out here.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Go ahead, step up to the mic. Please give us your name and address for the record, and period not to exceed 5 minutes.
Okay. Keelan Marshall, 1178 Capella Road, King, North Carolina. Haven't you guys already made it clear that y'all might not even be interested in the hospital anymore?
Yes.
So how would it be a hostile takeover at this point? Aren't you just here to provide us information for how you deem how our hospital may or may not be operable?
Yeah, essentially, we don't know if we can acquire it or not. You're absolutely correct. I'm just basically sharing the background of why we were here, what we tried to do, and why we were in Raleigh meeting with legislators. And you know, your hospital is not our only target in North Carolina. There are 4 others that we're working on. We're in 23 states and we have 140 facilities. But yeah, I don't know yet if your facility meets our metrics or not, because I have not had sufficient access. No one on our team has had sufficient access to fully make that determination yet.
Okay, one other question. Isn't like the main point of y'all's company to go around rural areas and determine whether or not the hospitals are sustainable, usable, or salvageable?
That is correct.
And so, as y'all did our hospital, you weren't even able to investigate it, so you haven't even been able to come up with a conclusion yet?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Secretary, ask for your name again. I didn't hear it either. Your
Keelan
name.
Marshall.
Shouldn't capture it. What, sir?
Keelan Marshall.
Keelan Marshall. You get his address?
Sheriff's,
What was your address, sir? Keelan, what was your address, sir?
1178 Capella Road. I'm a homeowner now too, for the people that said I couldn't run the last office.
By the way, magazine sweepstakes will not be at your door tomorrow with a check. Any other questions?
Hey Jay,
Yes.
I have a question that I'm gonna make a couple of comments to clarify.
Sure, go ahead, for a period not to exceed 5 minutes.
All right. Sonia Cox, 5645 Highway 66, King, North Carolina. So, Keelan made a couple of good observations after listening to what Kyle had to say. We're not talking with Braden Health in any way or form. They were just they were advising us on some things that they were concerned about with the lease and the hospital, and we were already having our own concerns when they came to us, but they were just asked here tonight to sort of bring into context why they came by and talked to, first tried to get in touch with Rick and then got in touch with Andy because he was chair of the board at the time. So I appreciate them being here tonight to try to clear the air. So one of the things that they mentioned was the lease, and there were some concerns about the lease. One of which is, it says in the lease that we, as a board, would receive an audit of what Life Bright's books or whatever else. Another thing that people don't understand about the lease is the county doesn't make anything off of the lease of the hospital. That lease is $1 a year for every clinic, Pine Hall, the King Clinic, it used to be J.R. Jones. All of that is $1 a year to the county. So whoever is the operator or the provider of the hospital is responsible for everything except HVAC replacement and roof replacement. So there is some problems with the hospital as far as the condition of it, but in the years that Pioneer and LifeBright have had it, that's on them to maintain it, not the county. So I'll just clear that up. So when I came on the board, I had only been elected in December. I had no idea when LifeBright's lease was up. Not sure any of us were, because we had just changed county managers. You would think, I'm sure Rick knew because he was former county manager, so he probably was the only person really keenly aware of when the contract was coming up for renewal. So it was our understanding LifeBright was supposed to come to us a year in advance and tell us whether or not they wanted to keep the hospital and renew their lease for another 5 years, so we would have ample time to get another provider or do the RFP process that we were talking about. So that didn't happen the summer before. And a year in advance, they never came to us. We didn't know. The only time that I could find researching the minutes was when Pam Tillman came to the board to tell the board about Christian Fletcher's indictments. Okay, so when May rolls around, I'm assuming that Ty must have emailed Pam, but at no time did our board tell Ty. He must have did that on his own volition because we didn't tell him, go ahead and tell Pam that we want to, everything's good with the lease. I'd not even seen the lease at that point. But after really looking at the lease, there's several things that weren't being followed, and one of which was that we'd never seen the audit. So I asked when was the last time that a presentation was made to the board to give us information about the hospital, and it had been almost 2 years. And they're required by the lease to do that quarterly. So Pam came and gave us information and shared us some financial information, which was passed out in closed session and immediately taken back up. We had just about 5 minutes to look over. So that was the first time that I was on the board that I ever seen any financial things, and that was even after we had signed the 5-year lease. So a lot of what happened with the lease was done in closed session because Rick and our county attorney suggested we do it that way because they didn't want to upset anybody at the hospital. They were worried about people getting upset and quitting their jobs or whatever. So to keep that down, they wanted it discussed in closed session. So that's what we did. And but one thing that we kind of ran out of time because we wanted to there's no doubt about we voted 4-1 to not renew the lease. That is when we were going to let Braden Health be the provider of the hospital. So when we got pushed against the wall, Pam told us to go ahead and sign the lease. She knew where all the skeletons and all the closets were, and she'd get us out of the lease if we needed to. That's the bottom line. And that made me real nervous and the rest of the board really nervous about renewing the lease. But we didn't want the hospital to close. The bottom line is we wanted that hospital to stay open, so we renewed the lease.
Any other questions for anybody who's got questions? Well, your hand was up first. Were we doing it for her?
I'll wait.
You sure you give your name and your address, period, not to exceed 5 minutes, sir?
Lori Amos, 1425 Amos Ridge Road, Sandy Ridge. My question is for the 3 county commissioners that are here. Let me go. I want to know, we have $10 million, right? I want to know which each one of you think that we should do with that $10 million. Should we leave it in Danbury and work on our hospital? Or are y'all for sending it to King for that 24/7 ER? I want to hear from each one of you what you're going to do with that $10 million.
We don't, the cord's not long enough, so you can come right here if you want something. So they're easier that way.
Okay, so I can only speak for myself because I'm one of 5 people. And the decision will be made by 5 people of what to do. We know that we cannot use it for repairs because the technical corrections in the budget said that we can only use it for new construction. Now, what I think should happen is the county should get out of the hospital business. I don't think it's the county's job to be in the hospital business because we've proven over time that that's just not the best way to run a hospital.
Can we clap for that? Right.
So that being said, you know, I think that one of the things that's kind of been thrown out there is that we know $10 million is not going to do much to build a hospital. It's going to take about $40 million to build a hospital. So where's that other $30 million going to come from? And do you want it to be the taxpayers? I mean, I don't know too many people that want their taxes increased to build a hospital anywhere, and I'm saying anywhere. So that being said, Rick keeps talking about USDA money. We don't even know if we would get approved for a USDA loan because there has to be a feasibility study to show if the USDA people think that it's a good investment or a risky investment to loan the county $30 million to build a hospital in Danbury. Now, the USDA money can only be used in Danbury. It can't be used in King because it can only be used for a critical access hospital. So there's no chance, and I'm speaking maybe for everybody, I don't know. There's no chance the county is going to build a hospital in King, okay? That ain't going to happen. Now, will they build one in Danbury? I don't know. It depends on what the USDA money, if it comes in, and how other ways we can offset the cost, because $10 million won't build a hospital. Now, I talked to the guy who was at the meeting, Andy actually talked to him at the meeting in Germantown, Nick from the Office of Rural Health. He was very helpful. He talked to us about some scenarios that could help keep a hospital open, because me and Andy told him we want the hospital to stay open, but how can we make this happen and it not cost the taxpayers a bunch of money, and how can the county get out of the hospital business? And so he was very helpful and had some ideas, and as a board, we want to discuss those ideas and see if we can figure out a way to do it. So I think we're all for keeping a medical facility in Danbury. I don't know what it's going to look like as far as how many beds. He said a lot of them that are successful have went down to 6 beds. I don't know what her average patient census is in the acute care. I'd love to know that. And maybe we could see if that's feasible or not. But we do want to keep medical facility, a small hospital in Danbury, but how are we going to pay for it? And that $10 million will only go so far. So that's my opinion.
So Sonya's hit the nail on the head. We gotta have a feasibility study done. That's the only thing, that's gonna tell what all you need to know. And $10 million will not build it. I appreciate on behalf of Braden's people going out there helping secure the $10 million. I did help out with that, talking to some of them. Kyle Hall was the one that kept it into the budget because it was talks of leaving out of it. Kyle Hall was on the committee that was able to keep that in to make sure Stokes County got that. So if there's any misunderstanding on that, that's what it is. As far as the hospital, I live in Lawsville on the state line. My parents are getting older. I want good health care up here. I don't know where the rumor started that the 4-to-1 was to shut down the hospital. That's the furthest thing from the truth. The biggest thing we was trying to do was make sure the doors stayed open. We got nursing home residents up there. We don't want them going anywhere. It's impossible to move them out overnight. And it was also said that there was a decision that was made that made it critical. Hospital didn't skip a beat. We had a lot of questions and a small amount of time to get that answered. You elected us to represent you. We was trying to get as much information we could. The problem of it was we was getting more contradicting stories than anything else. So the only way to get the full truth is have Braden's guys come in there and what they're telling us, and have Pam and them come there to tell us. That was the only way we got half of the truth. And then when we got told, just sign the lease, we know what all the skeletons are, I hope you get out of it, that scares me to death. What kind of skeletons? Does that mean the hospital could shut down next week? That's not what we're after. So, Lori, where'd you go to? To answer your question, I am for healthcare up here on this end of the county. If a provider is willing to come in and build it, it's going to be where they want to build it at. Will I fight to keep healthcare up this way? Absolutely. Will it stay in Danbury? I don't know. It's going to be mainly up to the provider. I'm sorry?
Where else would you put it?
Well, that's going to be done.
You have to do a study.
You have to do it through the feasibility study. That's not something we can just pick out. That's on anything with the USD loans and anything. You've got to have that done.
We're not, are y'all looking at Meadows?
I'm sorry.
That area, Meadows?
Looking in the Meadows area?
Yeah.
It still depends on what the feasibility study says. We can't say anything until that is complete.
What, are they currently doing that now?
What was it, an executive session? Did you discuss it?
We started that process.
Okay, I can say we have started that process. That's all I can say on it right now.
It was an executive session.
And how long should that take?
You know, I've never been through a hospital feasibility study. I'm being told it shouldn't take that long, but we're trying to move on it as fast as we can due to the indictments that's there, because I believe Mr. Fletcher goes to trial next month. Don't know how long that trial's gonna last, but the biggest thing is we're trying to move forward as fast as we can to make sure we got a medical facility here in this county to take care of our citizens.
But as far as this money, y'all looking to do a 24/7 ER in King?
It still falls back on the provider that's coming into it and the feasibility study. We can't tell people, okay, you're gonna put a 24-hour emergency facility here, and you're gonna put us a full-blown hospital here. Hey, I'm sorry?
Because we're not gonna fund it.
We're not funding it. And like I
The
said,
$10 million will not go to King for a 24/7 ER.
no, we have got the money split up right now as the way we proposed it was $5 million in King, $5 million up here on this end. So we split it dead in half. And it's sitting right there right now for the state, but it's like I said, we still can't say where it's gonna go. We still gotta go through the RFPs, feasibility study.
We ain't even got it yet.
Yeah, the state, we still ain't got the money from the state yet. We're just trying to get the paperwork done so they can get the money to us.
Why King? I mean, King is what, 15 minutes from Forsyth Baptist Hospital, some of the finest hospitals around. What do we have over here? Nothing.
Don't have nothing.
King's already got a YMCA. Just send it all to King.
It's not singing all the things. But what benefits down in there also benefits this part of the county. Does that mean everything goes to King? No. I don't look at the mountain dividing us. I look at us as a county. Whatever we can do to bring the stuff into this county to grow, just like the aquatic center. And I don't know if y'all familiar with that. How much time I have? 1 minute? Okay. It's,
What is that? I can be in Madison. It don't do us any good.
He didn't build Highway 52. He didn't do that.
That's what done.
He didn't do that.
so what I'm saying is, just to kind of clarify this right here, I had somebody come to me saying, why are you trying to push for an aquatic center in King? Well, it's either King or going to Forsyth County. I'd rather get those tax dollars here in this county. But that's not saying I want that hospital being built in King, in there. We can't say nothing until the feasibility study's done. That's nothing that a commissioner can do. And if anybody tells you that, then they're lying to you.
What company's doing the feasibility study, please? Name, address, and contact information.
Said they can't answer because it was an executive session, and if they reveal it, they're in violation of the law.
They can't tell us who is doing a feasibility
That's what they
study?
said, because it was decided in the executive session. Was the contract awarded there, or is she?
Is everything done? in
Okay,
closed
so they
session
said the
and available to the public?
That was per our attorney.
Could we have people talking in the microphone, please, instead of just standing, because we don't know who this lady is, and we know Laura.
You don't know Susan?
I've already given you my name and
I'm just
address.
kidding. Yeah, but they, again, they're recording it, Susan, so it's understandable. You want to come up here and say?
No, I think I know everybody here, Ronnie Mendenhall. I live on Flat Shores Road, Wilmington. Thank you, AJ.
Wait, I got to turn on my hearing aid if you're talking earlier, and I was kidding.
I think about everybody in here knows me. Ronnie Mendenhall, live on Flat Shores Road in Wilmington. Worked over here at Sandy Ridge as principal for 4 years. enjoyed every day of it, and I can just tell you up front, where it's gonna be built right now, I can't tell you because I'm not gonna make an answer until I get all the information I need to make a good decision. And when I get all that information, make that decision, I'll be able to say so. Thank you.
Well, y'all can make it the whole county and not just part of the county. The whole county.
Thank you. You were technically next. Do you want to go up or?
You want to go, Pam?
Okay, go ahead. Please give your name and address and talk into the mic, please.
Jen Long, 1299 Warrior Farm Road in Lawsonville. I just have a couple of questions. We were told that the county commissioners are also the trustees of the hospital.
Talk more into the mic.
We were told that.
Go closer.
We were told that the commissioners are also the trustees of the hospital. Is this true? Then how do you not know what's going on in the hospital? And you're talking about that you need to have stuff presented in commissioners meetings. You're the trustees, you know. If you don't know as a trustee, then we've got something really wrong with how it's set up. And two, Sandra, you just stated that Braden was going to come in and be the provider, but this gentleman has said he doesn't know if Braden wants to take over our hospital or not, or come in and be the provider. So what has changed your mind from the day that you went to look at it and today?
Yeah, absolutely. So we came in to try and get all of the information, and we were getting conflicting reports on if LifeBright would even be operating the hospital. So one of the scenarios that we were presented with was, and I think the question was phrased by one of the commissioners, if LifeBright stops operating the hospital all of a sudden, is your organization in a position where you can start operating immediately if you had to? And obviously there's a lot of information we didn't have and we still don't have, which is why we don't have a final decision there. But the answer was our organization has been in that situation many times before, and we've successfully operated hospitals that way. But unfortunately, we were not provided with all the information, so I really don't know if we can. But the question was asked, all right, so if LifeBright stops tomorrow, because that could happen, as the indictment and everything else was unfolding, can you guys take over? And our answer was, we've been in that scenario before, and we were successful.
So you're looking at it as an emergency situation, but you don't know if you would be willing to step in now and look at being a provider. Like, say that the new facility gets built in Danbury, and in all the community meetings that we have been to, it is said that the hope is if we can get a better facility, we can get a better provider for the hospital that is not necessarily going to be LifeBright forever. So is that something that you could look into as if we were building a new one that you might be interested in coming to step in?
Yes, ma'am. And I would say we are open to considering it. We would, of course, need to get all the information to make a final determination, but it's really important to note that as a patient safety organization and just as an organization with the mission of saving rural hospitals, there's a lot of facilities like this one where we don't see any return on it, right? And there's no business case for that, but and hopefully a lot of you guys have looked this up in the time you've been here. But Stokes is an example, like many others, of places where we've been, and it costs money to fly all of us in here, and it costs our organization quite a bit for me to have a 5-person team in Raleigh for a couple of weeks, and there's no return on investment for us there. So we are interested, but
And I
we
do
did.
understand, there is a business aspect, but there's also we should be allowed to have health care. So if you're talking about everything going to King, if you try to drive from here to King through these curves, you're gonna be taking an hour.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just saying that sometimes it may not be as profitable as a hospital in Winston-Salem, but the people should count just as much, and it shouldn't be $1 as a bottom line.
I absolutely agree. That's why we're here in the first place. But just to be completely clear, our organization has not looked at sites for a hospital. We do not have a preference on where it would be located in the county. We don't even have enough information to be that far. And honestly, from the way they've described it, and I have not been involved in any of those discussions or any of that, but from listening to them, it sounds like USDA would be funding it, so it's really up to USDA as far as whatever company they select or whoever selects for feasibility determines where to go. I think USDA would have to decide because they're putting up the cash.
I'm sorry, I just have one, I had two other questions. One is the feasibility study. Is the feasibility study being done including Danbury, or is it just being looked at from the 100-bed hospital and the urgent care 24/7 to go in Meadows?
Before that, what's your next question? Would that relate to these guys here? No, okay. So,
I just want to know, like, the feasibility study, are we looking at a feasibility study that would include Danbury? And if you don't know, Sandra, Andy can answer this, because Andy is the person who told me personally that he was looking for a 100-bed hospital in King and a 24/7 in Meadows. So this was on a phone call. You called me. So I just want to understand, is the feasibility ruling out Danbury 100%, or is the feasibility going to also include Danbury? That's it.
Based on what I know, a feasibility study would be looking at our whole county, every aspect of every community of our whole county, and healthcare, and how to best provide and meet all the needs. So there's no going in looking at what would this look like or what would that look like or put this there. Our board's not giving any direction to anybody about what they should be looking at, what they should be looking for, or anything like that. We're totally staying out of it and trying to get a picture of what healthcare looks like across the county. I think it's safe to say that. And I don't know if you got your other question answered in the beginning, but I think he may have answered it for you, that Braden's just here to talk about how they got involved in the first place, and that they in fact did lobby for the $10 million for the hospital, and they're not part of any hospital discussions with the board anymore, so.
Could we have Andy answer the question about the feasibility?
could we, wait a second on that? The team here, Braden, and then they have to catch a flight. And they're heading to another site in Florida. So they asked if there's any questions that you guys have if we take it right now, because they have to leave. So you guys have any questions directly for them, step up to the mic, tell us your name. And because they have to leave, we'll cut it down to 3 minutes because they have to go to the airport.
Derek Calloway, King, North Carolina, Callaway Road. How much would a good MRI cost? I mean, you're in this business. I mean, so if I was a hospital to go out and buy an MRI, what would that cost?
An MRI machine?
Yeah.
I think we just paid around $8 million for
$8
one.
million for an MRI machine. Mike Marshall, how much do you think it would cost to build a hospital? The size of Danbury?
10 billion.
So I mean, we got to look at the fact that $10 million is nothing. It's nothing. It's not going to get a hospital in Danbury. It's not going to get a 100-bed in the Meadows. It's not going to get a hospital in King. This money is going to come from the outside, which is going to come from investors who want to see a return on their money. So this is going to come from hospitals who want to actually make a profit. And while you can't put $1 on a human life, guess what? Hospitals can. They do it every day. We're not sitting here fighting over $10 million. We're sitting here fighting because it's politically expedient to do it right now, right before an election. Rick Morris ain't here, and for some reason or another, he seems to be in the middle of all this, because I got some questions for him too. Pam, where you? I've known you my whole life. You are obviously really good at running hospitals. I don't know what you was given to run this hospital, but you're obviously good at it. The county commissioners obviously care about what's happened to that hospital. As soon as they heard that this man was under indictment, I'm kind of worried that you got a CEO and his wife running a hospital. I mean, you know, I run a welding business, my wife, but I mean, I don't deal with hospitals. So I mean, you got a corporation. I would rather see a corporation deal with a hospital. I just would. And Mr. Fletcher, is he under indictment? He is he under any kind of home arrest or anything like that? Okay, so I mean, you know, he has done something for the federal government to come up and say, you're indicted. They don't do that for nothing. There's a reason behind it. So if we're looking for alternatives to come in there and keep that hospital open, I think we need to have good conversation between the commissioners and between Pam and for the whole county. Nobody in this county, and I live in King, wants to see Danbury shut down. We do want to see it a good hospital. Because the man that stays the business is Danbury is the one that sprays the weeds out in the parking lot. That place used to be packed. And now you can go by and there might be 4 or 5 cars in the parking lot. When I was hurt the other day, they asked me if I wanted to go to Forsyth, they asked me if I wanted to go to Baptist, they never asked me if I wanted to go to Danbury. I've got help at Danbury. I've got good help at Danbury. If I get hurt down here on Dan River, I want to be at Danbury. This is not this side of county, that side of county. King ain't trying to take nothing. If anything comes into King, it's because investors want to come into King. And let me tell you, it's a beautiful drive over here. I would love to live here. Y'all don't have to deal with the traffic. Yep. And a lot of the people coming in from out of town. I mean, King's getting horrible. And you're going to have to start dealing with a lot of these people moving out this part of the county. And that's going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, we're under a time clock. Did you want to say something?
Yes.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Field Office, 2757 Cisco Road, Austinville, North Carolina. I have a question for you, sir. What is the average age of the county residents in Stokes County?
Sorry, is the question?
Yes.
Demographics? I believe it's 65 and older, so it's in your Medicare population.
Okay. And how many, so if you got the hospital data from HHS, were they able to provide you with how many accidents that happen or injuries or illnesses from the state park? Hanging Rock State Park?
They don't usually get into that level of granular data. That's usually provided by the state of North Carolina as far as where incidents occur. You're usually looking at data that's after they've been transported by EMS. That would probably be information you could find from the state EMS registry as far as how many injuries occur in the state park. Yeah.
So I'm not real familiar with the hospital. Is there a helipad there? Are people helicoptered out, or are they taken by ambulance to next level hospitals?
So we were not allowed into the hospital property to determine how that occurred.
I didn't realize helipads were inside the hospital.
Yeah, so they're inside the hospital's property. The property of the hospital is what we were not allowed onto, so we did not go anywhere
The
on
hospital does not have a helipad.
Yeah,
That's
you have to be trauma certified now to get a helipad. That part I know.
But yet we have injuries coming out of Hanging Rock, right? And are they taken to Danbury first for triage, or are they actually sent to
That part I have no idea. I only know the basic law.
Depending on the injury. Okay. All right, because that's my question, because wouldn't it make sense to have the hospital closest to one of the busiest state parks in the state?
I think we all would like to have a hospital close to a state park because we all get hurt. So.
Okay. All right.
Do you have,
Thank you.
Sir, you want to come up? Why don't you come on up? This will be the last person for them to have to hit the windy roads. Your name and address for them.
Robert Knight, 1220 Hubby Moore Road, Lawsonville. I just want to start out by saying my mom owns a building, commercial property, and a company leases it for a tax service, but that doesn't mean my mom is in the tax business. That's very similar to what we're looking at doing here with the hospital. I just wanted that to be clear. The county's not being in the hospital business. But to ask you a direct question, how many days from when the vote to not renew was taken to the end of the contract? And I know it was a short amount of time, but was it 10 days, 2 weeks?
It was a couple weeks.
Okay. My next question, I'll try to organize the best I can, but how long has Braden Health been incorporated or been in business?
Braden Health was originally incorporated around 2008, 2009
Okay.
in Colorado.
In Colorado, okay. And, what would have happened, you're saying if it would have, to do the one-day closure, to get the new, we got the NPIs.
New certificate.
Yeah, new certificates and
Yeah.
contracts with the insurance company.
So what would have happened with the nursing home patients in that situation?
Yeah, so the nursing home is separate from the hospital. The nursing home would have remained operational, and the hospital employees, and at least if we were the provider selected, would have stayed a part of the organization. So, and when I say, so it would still, those patients would still be taken care of. It's not like they were thrown out or transferred or anything like that.
All right, and then is there an impartial organization to look into the data that you're using to deem the hospital troubled?
Yeah, so the University of North Carolina has the Cecil G. Shepp Center for Rural Health, which tracks closures. It's actually the foremost organization in the country that tracks rural hospitals and failures. They use the same data and they predict the same statistics that we are. If anything, they would probably tell you we're too conservative. They've had myself and Dr. Braden both guest lecture at their sister school, the Keenan Flagler School of Business, and talk about rural hospital closures. Usually when we end up in a discussion with them, their professors say, the Braden Health folks are usually too conservative when it comes to hospital closures. We think more of them will fail at a faster rate. So we estimate 500 hospitals to close in the next couple of years. They estimate 800, but just depending on how we're putting our data into the metric, sometimes we have a larger number, sometimes they have a smaller, but usually it's fairly close.
And when you first reached out into the county, or when you got into contact with the county commissioners and started that process, about what date was that?
That would have been a couple months prior, I believe. I don't have the exact date that was.
Sometime in June, maybe?
Probably, maybe a little bit before that, maybe May, you know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
We're closing it off with questions. They have to catch an airplane. Let's give them a round of applause. They traveled far to answer your questions. On behalf of the folks here in Stokes County, thank you all for your information and being open, and we're going to say a prayer for your travels down to Florida. So be sure you bring your passport because it's Florida. Okay. Does anybody have any questions relating to the hospital, to the commissioners, or anything in general? Go ahead, go ahead. Please take the mic and for a period not to exceed 5 minutes.
Sure. I'm as tired as you all are, probably more tired.
You be better, speak closer to the mic.
Sure. Just wanted to address a couple of things. Again, context is everything when a presentation is made. When it was questioned about notification for the lease renewal, that was July 2020. Does anybody know what was going on in July 2020, especially in the hospital with COVID? So I know that what I said, and I know that I gave the best notification I could in the hard situation. There are lots of things that are said in closed session. I have been in lots of closed sessions with lots of commissioners. I regret ever saying that statement, Sonia. That was in closed session, and I was so frustrated at the point I said that. That was a very poor choice of words. I have operated under the county from 89 to 1992, under Baptist Hospital from 92 to 2010, an interim management agreement to 2011, been through a bankruptcy with Pioneer and to Life-Right. In each and every one of those situations, what I was alluding to, I have had bad managers who made me do things that I hated. That if I was insubordinate, I could have been fired lots of times. Closing a hospice, closing a daycare, you name it. I have had to close services, go into a room and shed tears over things that were shut down. So my statement was, we couldn't close our hospital at the point it was brought up and have time to do what I know needs to be done legally according to the North Carolina statute 131E, which is what we are all held to in North Carolina. So yes, I regret saying that, and I regret that you felt the need to embarrass me once again, which I feel like you all have all publicly done to me. And I don't know what I have ever done with you except give you credible information, the best I could to try to help you all keep this hospital going. From the bottom of my heart, I have never done anything to harm any of you. And I don't deserve the way I've been treated. As far as the question about the USDA, our commissioners voted to have a hospital operations committee. That hospital operations committee has been working very hard for you as citizens and for our commissioners. The hospital operations committee, before $10 million ever came on the scene or was even thought of, had some of the plans that we are still talking about. Using USDA. We even invited USDA to one of our meetings. They got preliminary information from the county and found that we would be eligible for USDA funding if we got down the road for that. It was my recommendation to have a feasibility study done for all of our behalf. With all of the changes that we've been through, everybody wants all the information that Braden Health wanted. We need a feasibility study for our county. It includes lots of data from the hospital, lots of data about who's in the county and around the county. We will get that feasibility study done, and with the thanks of whoever got the $10 million, hopefully that will help pay for it so that won't be on the taxpayers. There are ways we can achieve what we need to achieve for the whole county. I would like to be a part of that, and I thank you all for caring enough to come out and hear about our hospital today. If you have any questions for me later, please feel free to get in touch with me.
I'm just gonna say, this whole process at the hospital has been tiring for everybody. I'm not working at that hospital, I don't know what Pam goes through, and I'm sure it's a lot. And the heart goes out to you and all the employees out there. But at no time did we show you any disrespect going through these meetings while we were trying to find information, and you said that we're sitting here handling on you. Well, it's also a hand on me when I got citizens and people I grew up with come to me saying, why are you closing down the hospital? The administrator told me this. And that's the reason why I had a meeting of saying, did anybody up here on this board try to close this hospital down? And your words was, no. And you said out of your mouth that you thought this board right here was trying to do all they could to get this hospital, keep this hospital going. Am I correct? Because it's on a meeting. It's a Board of Trustees meeting we had. And I asked questions. Did I harass you while asking these questions?
I will say what I said to you right after the meeting. If you heard a rumor that I said something, I would have expected you to pick up the phone and call me so I could tell you.
Okay, but what about the many citizens? But I asked you, did you see that anybody up on this board was trying to shut the hospital down? I was not hateful. I just asked a question. And then when I got a bunch of people coming to me, people I grew up with, people I've known my whole life, getting told that the hospital was trying to be shut down, that was not true. We put up just as much as anybody else did on this. When we were also working trying to keep this hospital open. My heart goes out to everybody that's involved on this. This has not been easy on anybody. It has been hard on everybody. I can tell you right now, I probably aged 10 years and 2 months. This has been very stressful for us all. But at no point did any commissioner try to shut that hospital down. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Appreciate it. You've been over a few times. I'm giving you 3 minutes because it's getting close.
Federal Office 2757 Sisk Road, Lawsonville, North Carolina. This is for you, Andy. The Mountain to Sea Trail land purchase on the river.
That's coming up. That's not with the hospital sector.
That's what?
That's not with the hospital sector. That's coming to the second part right here.
Okay. Second thing, the land feasibility study. Did we contract or bid that out at all, or did y'all pick somebody?
We sign NDAs.
We can't discuss that.
Right, so I'm trying to make sure I don't get us or the county into a lawsuit here.
So why don't you contact, because Mike's the same way, we're law enforcement, so we know some of the law. They'll get themselves in big trouble if they sign NDAs. So your best bet on that question is to go to the county manager. Sorry, county attorney.
I'll do it, but it's convenient for them that that was the case. Should have been jobbed out, should have been bid out, okay? Next question, if this hospital thing doesn't come through, what happens to the $10 million?
We don't even have $10 million yet.
We're still working on getting, even though it's been set aside in the state budget, we're still working on getting it. Now, it's still sit there for us, but we're still doing all
So
the paperwork.
what you're saying is if the hospital deal falls apart, the county will not get the $10 million. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Usually works that way.
Okay.
I used to be lottery commissioner, so I used to have a lot of people ask about the money from education that would go into the general fund to the locals.
Right.
If it's a line item that the General Assembly approved, which is what they're at, the money's, they can't use the money until they meet the certain criteria of where on that line item or category it's at. If the money doesn't get used, it gets returned back to the general fund for distribution to something else in the future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We're gonna make yours the last question because we have the second phase of tonight's community meeting, and I wanna make sure we're coming on the 9 o'clock hour, and I turn into a pumpkin at midnight. So I wanna make sure that we get out of here at a reasonable time. Please give your name and your address, please.
My name is Jenna Nicholson. I live at 2397 Moore Road in Lawsonville, North Carolina, 27022. I'm sorry, I'm tired.
Go closer a little bit.
I'm sorry, it's been a long day. My question is, and Lord forgive me,
Take your time.
this has been tried for everybody. I don't think anybody in this room wants the hospital closed. You know, nobody. My question is, so the indictments show that Christian Fletcher is up for indictment by the FBI. If something happens to him, what happens to the hospital? Do the taxpayers have to pay? Does the hospital close? Is there paperwork already being there? Because I've heard things, we've seen things, we just don't know. And I want to know, because I'm from Patrick County, and that hospital was closed, and I attended the Germantown meeting, and everybody there said, oh, it's so hard to get the hospital open back up. Literally last week, there was a news article that was saying it's opening back up. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that, because I have family in there. I went there, we went to Pioneer, we went to Stokes, we've done that. But my question is, what happens if he is indicted?
Well, I'll do that in a short version since we got an attorney here, but we can talk generality about it, okay? First off, there's no trigger on it, correct me counsel if I'm right, until he's been found guilty of a jury of his peers. So at this particular point, there's no trigger that would trigger any clause in the lease for any kind of dramatic action or takeover. The trial is, I think someone said 2 months from now?
No, next month.
Next month? Okay, so if something happens and he is found guilty, then your county commissioners will have to have an emergency meeting, take action based on clauses, which I don't know, in the lease, which I'm sure would revert back to them overseeing whoever takes over the hospital. But you've heard from every one of them tonight that no one they've all assured that the doors will not close. And I'm sure legally they've protected you all as taxpayers, myself as a Stokes County taxpayer, that they will not fall into a rut where that hospital closes because somebody's been indicted under the management clause of the lease and the management agreement they're doing. So again, this is a situation where I feel that, correct, am I right on this, Commissioner? At this point, don't get scared on someone being indicted because he could be found not guilty. I mean, we do live in a society that dictates innocence before someone is thrown to jail. If he's found not guilty, of course, the agreement will continue.
There are contingency plans that have been put in place. The attorneys, again, vice right attorneys to the county attorney have provided those.
Thank you. That's what we're trying to say. So
I
don't,
want that to go out to scare people
yeah,
again.
don't get frightened, don't get scared.
There's so many misinformation that are spread. There's blogs, there's Facebook, social media, and, you know, I just wanna hear the truth, what will happen.
I like the meme that says, believe 1% of what's on Facebook. I mean, my good friend, I'm picking on Mike Marshall, myself, anybody that's been on social media. There's so many. Susan, how many times have we seen stuff you've come, we've talked about it in the past. Some of the stuff out there is just outrageous, you can't believe it. So I always urge everybody to do as much research, and that's why you guys are here. And thank you for being here, for doing that. Is there any other questions you all want to have of your commissioners on the hospital before we close this segment out? Going once, going twice. Let's give yourselves a hand for, I personally think you guys have the heart, and we will pray this Sunday for you all that God will give a solution to Stokes County in this hospital situation. Many of you may or may not know, I am the owner of Cox Needham, and I remember 25 years ago first going to the hospital, and it was a real vibrant, booming hospital in that area and everything. And I've even talked to Senator Tillis about it in D.C. Not so much about your hospital, but the rural hospitals closing down. It doesn't help anybody. I mean, we've been a victim of a rural funeral home closing down because people have closed them, have moved away from the area and not supported the business. And I'm sure I heard tonight some of you all also saying the same thing about, you know, we're all victims of the new generation where they don't want to live out in the country, but they want to live downtown Winston and pay $1 million for a condo and stuff like that. So having said that, the second segment that we're going to do, I'm going to turn it over. And because of the time factor, there's really going to be no questions and answers unless they want to afterwards. But I want to try to get you guys home by 10-ish, 10:30, because nobody should be on the roads this late. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going into the second phase. And Stevenson, the floor is yours. There's the mic.